I woke up screaming. Not the kind of scream you hear in movies, the dramatic, drawn-out kind that builds to a crescendo. This was short, sharp, animal. Like something had clawed its way out of my chest, and I was just the container it had to break through to escape. For a full minute, I couldn't remember where I was. The ceiling above me was white, familiar, but wrong somehow. The sheets beneath my hands were the same Egyptian cotton we'd bought for our wedding registry, but they felt like sandpaper against my skin. Everything was too bright. Then the memories hit me like a freight train. The hospital room, the beeping machines, the way her hand had gone cold in mine at the very end, even though I'd been holding it for hours, trying to pump my own warmth into her lifeless fingers. The paramedics telling me to step back. The doctor with the tired eyes who'd seen too many husbands fall apart in that exact corridor. I sat up so fast my vision swam. The bedroom was exactly as it had been on our wedding night. The same dresser with her perfume bottles arranged in a perfect line. The same walk-in closet where her side was still half empty because she hadn't finished moving all her things in yet. The same goddamn wedding photo on the nightstand. The one where she was laughing at something stupid I'd said, her head tilted back and her throat exposed like she had absolutely no fear of me or anyone else in the world. My hands were shaking. I looked down at them. Younger hands, smoother, without the scars I'd accumulated over years of working with my hands. No wedding ring. Not yet. I scrambled out of bed and nearly fell over my own feet. The bathroom mirror confirmed what I already knew. I was 28 years old again, and gray in my hair. No lines around my eyes from squinting at spreadsheets, and permanent furrow between my brows from years of wondering when the other shoe would drop. And standing behind me in the mirror, still in her silk pajamas, was Sarah. She was alive. Sebastian? Her voice was sleepy, annoyed. What's wrong? She glanced at the clock on her bedside table. 4 in the morning. Get back in bed. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at her reflection, trying to reconcile the woman I'd watched die with the woman who was currently frowning at me like I was an inconvenience. Sebastian. She sat up, and the sheet fell away from her shoulders. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful, even at the end, when the cancer had hollowed out her cheeks and turned her skin the color of old paper. But this Sarah was full of life, full of irritation, full of everything I'd lost. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I opened my mouth to tell her. T.O. warn her. To say something, anything, that would explain why I was standing in our bathroom at 4 in the morning, crying like a child who just realized that monsters were real. But what came out was, you're pregnant. The words just fell out of my mouth that I hadn't even known I was going to say them, but once they were out, I knew they were true, because I remembered. I remembered everything. The 5-month-old baby we'd never got to meet, the way she'd held my hand and told me it wasn't my fault, the way I'd held her anyway and promised I would make it up to her somehow. I remembered everything, right up to the moment she'd been taken from me, and then I remembered after that, the way I'd fallen apart. The way I'd blamed everyone, myself, the doctors, God, anyone who would listen. The way I'd let the grief curdle into something ugly and self-destructive. I remembered the woman in the hospital room, the one who'd come to see me after Sarah was gone, the one who'd listened to me pour out my soul and then asked, very softly, what will you do now? I remembered the answer I'd given her, the real answer, not the brave face I showed the world. And I remembered, with a clarity that made my stomach turn, that I'd spend the next 3 years of my life becoming someone else. Someone who would make Sarah's death mean something by punishing everyone who'd ever hurt her, including myself. Sebastian. Sarah's voice was sharper now. What are you talking about? I'm not pregnant. We've only been married for 2 weeks. I'm on birth control. We haven't even. You are. I turned to face her. The words were coming faster now, spilling out of me like I had no control over them. You're pregnant, and you don't know it yet, and you're going to lose the baby in 5 months, and I'm going to blame myself, and you're going to try to reassure me, and I'm going to let you. And then you're going to. I stopped. I couldn't tell her that the baby she didn't even know about yet was going to be the first domino to fall, that after the miscarriage, everything would start to unravel. That she'd become someone I didn't recognize, and I'd become someone she couldn't love. Sarah was out of bed now, standing in front of me with her hands on my shoulders. Her touch was warm, real, alive. Sebastian. Her voice had softened. You're scaring me. You're not making any sense. Do I need to call someone? Are you having a panic attack? I shook my head. I couldn't explain it to her. How could I tell my wife that I'd already lived through this life once, and I'd failed her in every way that mattered? That I'd been so consumed by my own grief that I hadn't seen how badly she was suffering? That I'd let her slip away from me, not just physically, but emotionally, until the woman in the hospital bed at the end wasn't even the same person I'd married? No. I took a breath. No, I'm fine. I had a dream, a nightmare. It felt so real. I couldn't. I let her guide me back to bed, let her tuck me in like I was the one who needed taking care of. She pressed a kiss to my forehead and said something about my overactive imagination, about how I'd always been too intense for my own good, about how everything was fine, and I should go back to sleep. And I did. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of her body next to mine, and I tried to believe her. But I couldn't. Because I knew what was coming. I knew every single moment of the next 3 years, right up to the moment her heart stopped beating. And I knew, with a certainty that hollowed me out, that this time I was going to do things differently. The first week was the hardest. I couldn't look at Sarah without seeing the ghost of who she'd become, the hollow-eyed woman who'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped talking to me about anything that mattered. The woman who'd started spending more and more time at work because being at home with me was too painful. I couldn't look at her without remembering the screaming matches, the accusations. The way she'd thrown things at me and I just stood there and taken it because I deserved it, because I'd failed her, because everything that went wrong was my fault and I knew it. And I couldn't look at her without remembering the final irony, that even at the very end, after everything we'd been through, I still loved her. God help me, I loved her more than I'd ever loved anything in my life. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I withdrew. I told myself it was for her own good, that if I distanced myself now, she wouldn't be so hurt when the inevitable happened. That if I stopped loving her first, it wouldn't destroy me the way it had before. I told myself a lot of things that first week. None of them were true. By the second week, I was sleeping in the guest room. Sarah didn't understand why. I told her I was having trouble sleeping, that I didn't want to keep her awake, that it was better if we had separate beds for now. She looked at me with those gorgeous hazel eyes, the ones that could see right through me, and she knew I was lying, but she didn't push it. She just nodded and said, "Okay, Sebastian, whatever you need." That was the worst part. She was so patient and so understanding. So willing to give me space when what I really needed was for her to fight me, to demand answers, to make me tell her the truth about why I was pulling away. But she didn't. She just waited. And the waiting made it worse. By the third week, I was coming home late every night. Not because I was having an affair, I wasn't, but because I couldn't bear to sit across from her at the dinner table and pretend everything was fine. I couldn't bear to watch her laugh at something I said, and remember that there would come a time when we wouldn't laugh together anymore. So I stayed at work, that I'd buried myself in spreadsheets and quarterly reports and all the mundane bullshit that had never mattered to me before. And when Sarah asked where I'd been, I told her I was working on a big project, that my boss needed me, that it was just temporary. She knew I was lying. She had to know, but she still didn't push. And then, at the end of the third week, I did something that changed everything. I met her. Her name was Jessica, and she worked in accounting. I'd known her for months, but I hadn't really seen her until that day. She was beautiful in a way that was different from Sarah. She was younger, for one thing, with the kind of reckless energy that came from not having been worn down by life yet. She had dark hair and dark eyes and a laugh that made you want to laugh too, even when you didn't know what the joke was. And when she came to my office that afternoon to go over some figures, I realized I was looking at the beginning of the end. Because I knew what was supposed to happen, that I, in the first timeline, Sarah and I had been happy together, genuinely happy, until the miscarriage, and then everything had fallen apart. I grieved, she grieved, and we'd done it separately, each of us trapped in our own private hell, and by the time we finally found our way back to each other, it was too late. But this time I had the opportunity to do it differently. I didn't have to make the same mistakes. I didn't have to wait until the pain was too much to bear before I reached out. I could just not. I could leave Sarah now, before the miscarriage, before she got pregnant, before we had a chance to hurt each other the way we had before. I could walk away cleanly, with no children to fight over, no shared history to unravel, no reason to look back. And I could find someone who didn't come with all the baggage of a life I'd already lived once. Jessica smiled at me from across my desk, and I smiled back. It started slowly. A coffee here, a lunch there, nothing inappropriate, not yet, just two colleagues getting to know each other. But every time I looked at Jessica, I saw a version of my life where I wasn't carrying around the weight of Sarah's death, where I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, where I could just be without constantly bracing for impact. It was such a seductive thought, just walking away. Just letting Sarah go before I could hurt her, before I could fail her, before she could die and leave me alone to pick up the pieces of a life I'd built around her. And I was so goddamn tired of being the one who was always waiting, always watching, always knowing how things were going to end and feeling powerless to change any of it. So I let myself fall. Not all at once, not in a grand romantic gesture. IT was a series of small surrenders, a lingering glance across the office, a hand on the arm that stayed a beat too long. A dinner that wasn't really about dinner, and a bottle of wine that emptied too quickly, and a night I didn't remember walking into but couldn't seem to walk out of. And then one morning, I woke up in a hotel room with Jessica lying next to me, and I realized I'd become the man I'd sworn I'd never be. I didn't feel guilty. That was the worst part. I felt relieved. Because now it was done. Now the line had been crossed, and there was no going back. Now I could stop fighting the inevitable and just let the disaster unfold. Sarah was going to find out. She was too smart not to, and when she did, she would hate me. She would leave me. And I wouldn't have to watch her die slowly, piece by piece, because I would already be gone. I got up, showered, dressed. I left Jessica asleep in the hotel bed, and I went home to face what I'd done. Sarah was waiting for me when I got back. She was sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee and a book, looking like she hadn't slept. The circles under her eyes told me she'd spent the night crying. "I know," she said, without looking up from her book. "I know about the girl in accounting." I opened my mouth to deny it, to make excuses, to somehow salvage a situation that was clearly unsalvageable. "Don't." She finally looked up at me, and the pain in her eyes was worse than any accusation she could have leveled. "Don't lie to me, Sebastian, that I know everything that I've known for weeks. The way you talk about her, the late nights, the distance that I'm not an idiot." She set her book down. The movement was deliberate, controlled. She was holding herself together with a thin thread of her dignity, and I could see it fraying with every word. "I just need to know one thing." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Why? What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong," I said, and that, at least, was the truth. "It's not about you, Sarah. It's about me. It's always been about me." She just looked at me, waiting, not understanding. And I realized in that moment that I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't tell her that I was leaving her to save her from the future I'd already lived. I couldn't explain the miscarriage, the cancer, the slow unraveling of everything that mattered. She would think I was insane, or worse, she would know I was telling the truth, and the knowledge would destroy her. So I did what I do best. I lied. "I just don't love you anymore." I said. The words came out flat, emotionless, like they belonged to someone else entirely. I don't know when it happened. IT just did. And I don't want to keep pretending that it hasn't. Sarah flinched like I'd hit her, but she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked at me for a long, terrible moment, and then she nodded. Okay, she said. Okay, Sebastian. I understand. And that was it. She got up, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door. I didn't follow her. I just stood there in the living room, staring at the closed door, waiting for something to happen. Nothing happened. And that, more than anything else, was how I knew I'd already lost her. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics and legalities. Sarah moved out of the apartment within a week. She packed her things while I was at work, left a note on the kitchen counter with the address of her sister's house, and never came back. I told myself it was for the best, that I'd done the right thing, that I was sparing her from the pain of watching me fail her, the way I'd failed her in the first timeline, that this was the cleanest possible ending. But at night, alone in the apartment we'd shared, I found myself wandering into the guest room where I'd slept those first few weeks. I found myself staring at the door she'd closed that last night, wondering what she'd been thinking when she'd walked away. I missed her. God, I missed her so much it felt like my chest was caving in. Did I miss the way she laughed, the way she smelled, the way she always knew exactly what to say when I was spiraling? I miss Sarah. Not the idea of her, not the version of her I'd created in my head, but the real woman who had loved me and trusted me and deserved better than what I'd given her. But it was too late for that now. The divorce papers were already in motion. Jessica was already becoming a fixture in my life. There was no undoing the past 2 months, no rewriting the script I'd already written. I had made my choice, and I had to live with it. It wasn't until I saw Sarah again that I realized how badly I'd miscalculated. I was at the grocery store, picking up a few things for dinner, when I turned down the cereal aisle and found myself face to face with her. She was thinner than I remembered. Not sick thin, not the hollowed out ghost of the first timeline, but thinner, the kind of thin that came from not eating. The kind of thin that told me she'd been struggling the same way I had. Sebastian. Her voice was so quiet I almost missed it. I didn't expect to see you here. Sarah. I couldn't breathe. I literally could not get air into my lungs. She looked so real, so alive, so here. How are you? She laughed, a brittle sound that didn't reach her eyes. How do you think? You asked me for a divorce 3 weeks after telling me I was pregnant, and then you acted surprised when I told you I'd keep the baby. Wait, what? The words came out before I could stop them. You're pregnant. Sarah's face went pale. You don't remember? The night you told me you didn't love me anymore. The night you came home from your affair and lied to my face. I told you I was pregnant. I told you I was keeping the baby, with or without you. I stared at her. I honestly didn't remember any of that. I remembered coming home, remembered the confrontation, remembered telling her the lie, and then I'd shut down. I'd blocked out the rest of it. I'd retreated into my own head so thoroughly that I'd missed something as important as the fact that the baby we'd lost in the first timeline was still going to happen in this one. Sarah. I reached out, but she flinched away. I don't remember. Of course you don't. Why would you? Her voice was shaking now. It's just another thing I said that you didn't listen to. Just another conversation you'd rather pretend never happened. She stepped back, putting distance between us. I'm due in 5 months. You'll get your divorce. Just remember that you're the one who wanted this. She turned and walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the cereal aisle, surrounded by boxes of processed food and generic families doing their weekly shopping, and I felt the bottom drop out of my world. Because now I understood what I'd done. I hadn't just repeated the same mistakes from the first timeline, I'd made them worse. In my desperate attempt to avoid the future, I'd engineered a scenario where the same tragedy would unfold, but this time, I was the cause of it. The miscarriage, the cancer, the slow unraveling of everything Sarah had ever loved about me. It wasn't a tragedy of fate. It wasn't a series of unfortunate events. It was me. It had always been me. And I'd just given myself 3 years to watch it happen again. That night, I went home and did something I hadn't done since I'd started this whole mess. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started writing. Not a letter to Sarah. I wasn't brave enough for that. Not a confession of what I'd done, or an explanation of why I'd done it. Nothing that would make things better because there was no making things better now. It was just the truth, the whole truth. Every detail of the first timeline, from the day I'd woken up screaming to the moment I'd realized I was reliving the worst years of my life. All of it. Every betrayal, every failure, every moment I'd been too selfish to see the damage I was causing. And when I was done, when I poured everything out onto the page, I saved the document, encrypted it, and put it in a folder labeled for Sarah. Read this if you ever wonder why. I didn't send it. I wasn't ready for that yet. But I knew, in a way I hadn't known anything since I'd woken up in that hospital room, that I would eventually have to. Because Sarah deserved the truth. Even if the truth destroyed her. Even if it destroyed both of us. She deserved to know why I'd done what I did. And more importantly, she deserved to know that it wasn't her fault. It was never her fault. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my home office, staring at the encrypted file I created, and I thought about all the ways I could have done things differently. All the moments I could have stopped, turned around, and chosen a different path. All the chances I'd had to tell Sarah the truth, and all the lies I told instead. But there was no going back now. There was only moving forward, and trying to minimize the damage I'd already caused. The next morning, I went to work. Jessica was waiting for me at my desk, looking like she hadn't slept either. Sebastian. She didn't smile. We need to talk. Not here. I glanced around the open plan office, aware of all the eyes that were suddenly very interested in their computer screens. Let's take this somewhere private. She nodded and followed me to the conference room. I closed the door behind us and turned to face her. I can't do this anymore, I said. The words came out flat, exhausted. I can't keep pretending that what we have is anything more than a distraction. I'm still married. My wife is pregnant. And your wife is pregnant. Jessica's face went through a complicated series of expressions: shock, confusion, then something that looked a lot like anger. When were you going to tell me that? I'm telling you now. I sat down heavily in one of the chairs, suddenly too tired to stand. I didn't know until yesterday. She told me the night I told her about us, but I was so focused on my own bullshit that I didn't hear her. Jessica stood there for a long moment, staring at me. Then she laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that cut through the silence like a blade. You're a piece of work, you know that? She shook her head. You show up at my office. You charm me with your sad eyes and your tragic stories about how your marriage is falling apart, and you never once mentioned that your wife is pregnant. She took a step closer, and there was something dangerous in her eyes. What was the plan here? Sebastian, get me to fall for you. And then what? Tell me after I was already in too deep to walk away. I didn't plan any of this, I said. And that, at least, was true. I wasn't trying to trap you. I wasn't trying to trap anyone. I was just what? She demanded. Just looking for someone to make you feel better about yourself? Just looking for someone to stroke your ego while your pregnant wife was at home wondering why her husband stopped loving her. I never stopped loving her. The words came out before I could stop them. That's the worst part. Jessica, I never stopped loving her. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to find the right words. I can't explain it. I can't explain any of it, but I need to end this. Whatever this is between us, I need to end it now. Don't worry about that. Jessica's voice was cold, clinical. It's already over. I just didn't know it yet. She walked out of the conference room without looking back. I sat there for a long time, staring at the closed door, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do next. The thing about getting a divorce in this country is that it takes time. Even when both parties agree, even when there's no contesting the terms, there's a waiting period, a cooling off period. A time when you're supposed to reflect on your decision and decide if you really want to go through with it. I knew all of this. I'd been through it before in the first timeline, but the waiting didn't make it easier. Every day, I checked my email for updates from the lawyer. Every day, I waited for the other shoe to drop, for Sarah to decide she wanted to fight me after all, for the whole thing to become the messy, drawn-out disaster I'd been dreading. But Sarah didn't fight. She just waited, and the waiting was its own kind of torture. 2 weeks after the grocery store encounter, I got an email from my lawyer informing me that Sarah had signed the preliminary divorce papers, N.O. contests, N.O. demands. Just her signature and a note. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sebastian. I read that note more times than I care to admit. I analyzed it for hidden meanings, for subtext, for any clue about what she was really thinking, but there was nothing to find. Just a simple, devastatingly polite farewell from a woman I'd hurt more than anyone else in my life. I didn't know what to do with myself after that. I'd spent so many weeks waiting for the shoe to drop that when it finally did, I felt hollowed out, lost. Like I'd been running toward a finish line that didn't exist anymore. So I did what I always did when I didn't know what to do. I buried myself in work. It was a Wednesday when I got the call. I was in a meeting, staring blankly at a presentation about quarterly projections, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Mr. Blake. The voice on the other end was professional, neutral. This is Dr. Thompson from Mercy Hospital. I'm calling about Sarah Mitchell. My heart stopped. Is she okay? What happened? Sarah is fine. She's awake and stable, the doctor said quickly, probably sensing the panic in my voice. But she was in a car accident this morning. She suffered some minor injuries, but the important thing is that the baby is fine, and no signs of distress. But I thought you should know, she listed you as her emergency contact. She what? The words came out as a whisper. Sarah had listed me as her emergency contact, even after everything, even after the lies and the betrayal and the divorce papers? Mr. Blake, are you still there? Yes. I was already standing, already moving toward the door. I'm coming. I'll be there as soon as I can. I hung up and walked out of the meeting without a word of explanation. I didn't care about the presentation. I didn't care about the quarterly projections. All I cared about was getting to the hospital, seeing Sarah, and making sure she was okay. The drive to Mercy was a blur. I don't remember much about it, to be honest. Just the screaming in my head, the same words repeating over and over. Not again. Not again. Not again. In the first timeline, Sarah had been diagnosed with cancer 3 years after the miscarriage. She'd fought it for 2 years, with everything she had, and then she lost. I'd watched her die slowly, piece by piece, and I blamed myself for every single moment of it. But this timeline was different. In this timeline, Sarah was pregnant. In this timeline, the baby was going to be born. In this timeline, I was going to make sure she lived. I was so focused on that thought, so focused on making sure the accident wasn't the beginning of the end, that I almost missed the reality of what I was walking into. Sarah was in a private room on the second floor. When I pushed open the door, she was sitting up in bed, a bandage on her forehead and a bruise blooming across her cheek. The baby monitor next to her bed was beeping a steady rhythm, indicating that the baby's heart rate was normal, stable, alive. Sebastian. She didn't sound surprised to see me. I figured they'd call you. I told them not to, but I figured they'd call you anyway. I asked you to list me as your emergency contact. I said, when we got married, I told you I would always want to know if something happened to you. Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I remember. You were so insistent about it. I thought it was sweet back then. We looked at each other for a long moment. The silence between us was heavy, filled with all the words we weren't saying. Are you okay? I finally asked. The doctor said the baby is fine, but I need to hear it from you. The baby is fine. She touched her stomach protectively. They did a full ultrasound. Everything looks normal. The accident was just a fender bender. Really, I was stopped at a light and someone rear-ended me. The airbag deployed, which is why my face looks like I went 10 rounds with a heavyweight. But the baby was never in any danger. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Thank God. Sarah laughed, a quiet, bitter sound. You know, when we first got married, I thought you'd be the kind of husband who would panic if anything happened to me. I thought you'd be the one who would rush to the hospital, who would drop everything to make sure I was okay. And then, when I got pregnant, I thought you'd be the kind of father who would worry about every single little thing, and I thought you'd be overprotective, maybe even annoying about it. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, letting her words wash over me. But now, she shook her head. Now I don't know what to think. You told me you don't love me anymore. You asked for a divorce. You started a relationship with someone else. And yet here you are, standing in my hospital room, looking at me like I'm the only person in the world who matters. She paused. What am I supposed to do with that, Sebastian? What do you want from me? I opened my mouth to answer, to tell her the truth, to finally tell her everything. But the words wouldn't come. They were stuck in my throat, blocked by fear and guilt and the terrible certainty that the truth would only hurt her more. I don't want anything, I said. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Bullshit. Sarah's voice was flat, but there was an edge to it I hadn't heard before. You don't get to do that. You don't get to walk away from me and then show up like nothing happened. You don't get to be the concerned husband when you're the one who tore us apart. I flinched, but I didn't argue, because she was right. She was absolutely right. You're right, I said. I don't have any right to be here. I paused trying to find the right words. I just needed to see you, to make sure you were really okay. Sarah's expression softened slightly, but she didn't invite me closer. I'm fine, Sebastian. The baby is fine. You don't need to worry about us anymore. I don't think I'll ever stop worrying about you. The words came out before I could stop them. I know that's not what you want to hear. I know I don't have any right to say it, but it's the truth. Sarah looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. Tell me why. Why what? Why you really left? Her voice was raw, honest. Don't tell me you just stopped loving me. I don't believe that. I've never believed that you loved me, Sebastian, that I know you did. Something happened to you. Something changed, and I need to know what it was. I felt the truth building up inside me. The whole, terrible truth. The first timeline, the miscarriage, the cancer, the slow unraveling of everything we'd had. All of it sitting there in my throat, threatening to spill out. But I couldn't tell her. I couldn't burn her with that knowledge. She was pregnant and stressed, and still trying to pick up the pieces of a life I'd shattered. I can't, I said. Sarah, I can't tell you why, not yet. Maybe not ever, but I need you to know I didn't stop loving you. I never stopped loving you. Every decision I made, every choice I made, it was all because I was trying to protect you from something I can't explain, something you wouldn't believe if I tried. Sarah stared at me for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, I think you underestimate me, Sebastian. I think you always have. I left the hospital that night feeling worse than I had before I'd arrived. Sarah had stopped talking to me after that. She turned away, closed her eyes, and pretended to sleep. I'd stood there for a moment longer, hoping she'd say something else, and then I'd walked out. The drive home was a blur of self-loathing and regret. I replayed every conversation, every decision, every moment I could have done things differently. And I kept coming back to the same conclusion. I was the problem, that I had always been the problem. But I still couldn't tell Sarah the truth. I still couldn't bring myself to explain the nightmare I'd been living in since the day I'd woken up screaming. Because once I told her everything would change, she would look at me differently. She would see me as a stranger, a man who had lived a whole life she knew nothing about, a man who had been keeping secrets from her since the very beginning. And maybe that was what she needed. Maybe the truth would set her free, would let her move on without the burden of wondering why I'd left. Or maybe it would just destroy her the way it had destroyed me. I didn't know, and I was too afraid to find out. The next week, I threw myself into work with a vengeance. I stayed late every night, came in early every morning, took on projects I had no business being involved in. I was trying to outrun my own thoughts, trying to drown out the voice that kept whispering it's your fault. All of it's your fault. Jessica avoided me. That was a small mercy. She transferred to a different department, and whenever we passed each other in the hallway, she looked straight ahead like I didn't exist. I couldn't blame her. I had used her. Even if I hadn't meant it, I had dragged her into my mess, and then walked away like she never mattered. She deserved better than that. She deserved better than me. Sarah, on the other hand, had started sending me texts again. Not long ones. Not emotional ones. Just short, practical messages about the pregnancy and the upcoming divorce. Doctor's appointment next Tuesday. Everything looks good. The lawyer sent me the final draft of the divorce papers. I'll sign them tomorrow. The baby is moving. It's weird. I read every single one. I responded to every single one, even if it was just a thumbs up or a glad to hear it. I was desperate for any connection to her, any indication that she hadn't completely closed herself off from me. But I knew, deep down, that I was losing her. I had been losing her from the moment I'd made the decision to distance myself. And now it was just a matter of time before the divorce was finalized, before Sarah moved on with her life, and I was left alone with my secrets and my regrets. It was the first day of my 4th week of avoidance that the universe decided to force me to confront everything I'd been running from. I was at home, sitting on my couch, staring at the encrypted file I created weeks ago, the For Sarah folder, the truth I'd been too afraid to share. I opened it. The words were still there, just as I'd written them, the whole truth, from beginning to end, every detail of the first timeline, every failure, every regret. All of it, sitting there on my screen, waiting for me to decide what to do with it. I had been so sure, when I'd written it, that I would eventually share it with Sarah, that she deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful. But now, staring at the document, I wasn't so sure. Would the truth help her? Or would it just complicate things further? Give her new reasons to hate me? New reasons to feel betrayed? Was I really doing this for her? Or was I just trying to ease my own conscience? I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. And then my phone buzzed, breaking me out of my spiral. It was Sarah. I need to see you. Can you come to my sister's house tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you. I stared at the message. My heart was racing, my mind spinning with possibilities. What could she possibly need to tell me? Was it about the baby? About the divorce? About something else entirely? I typed back. Of course. What time? 10 a.m. I'll be waiting. The next morning, I drove to Sarah's sister's house with a knot in my stomach the size of a fist. The house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place you'd expect a young couple to start a family. It was modest, understated, nothing like the upscale apartment I'd been living in since Sarah moved out. I parked the car and walked up to the front door. I could see Sarah through the window, sitting on the couch with a cup of tea in her hands. She looked tired, stressed. But there was something in her expression that I couldn't quite identify, a mixture of determination and sadness that made my heart ache. She opened the door before I could knock. Sebastian. She stepped aside. Come in. I followed her into the living room. The house was quiet, empty. Sarah's sister was at work, apparently. We were alone. Thank you for coming, she said, sitting back down on the couch. I know I don't have any right to ask you for anything, but I needed to tell you something in person that I couldn't do it over the phone. I sat down across from her. What is it? Sarah took a deep breath. Then she said something that made the world spin out from under me. I know about your affair, Sebastian. I've known for weeks, but that's not what I need to tell you. She paused. Her hands were shaking. I need to tell you that the baby is yours that I know you probably assumed it was. I know it's not something that would even occur to you to question, but I need you to hear it from me. The baby is yours. It's always been yours. I stared at her, confused. Sarah, I never questioned. I know. She cut me off, but I need you to understand what I'm about to say next. And I need you to listen without interrupting. She took another breath. The night you told me you didn't love me anymore, the night you came home and told me about the affair, I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to process any of it. And I made a choice that I'm not proud of. She looked down at her hands, still trembling. I called someone one day, an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, and I want to see him. Did I didn't sleep with him? I couldn't do that. But I was so angry, so hurt, so desperate for someone to tell me I wasn't crazy that I let him kiss me, just once. And then I left and I never spoke to him again. She looked up at me, and there were tears in her eyes. I wanted to hurt you the way you'd hurt me, she said. I wanted you to feel a fraction of the pain I was feeling, and I was so ashamed of myself afterward that I didn't know how to face you. I didn't know how to tell you what I'd done. I was silent for a long moment. My mind was reeling, trying to process what she'd just told me. Are you telling me, I finally said, that you don't know if the baby is mine? No. Sarah shook her head firmly. I know the baby is yours. The timing doesn't work otherwise. I saw him 2 weeks before I found out I was pregnant. The baby is yours, Sebastian. I know it is. But you still want me to know, I said slowly, that you made a choice, that you wanted to hurt me. Sarah nodded. Yes, because I need you to understand that I'm not perfect. I'm not the person you probably think I am, that I've made mistakes. Too, that I've done things I'm not proud of. And I need to know if that changes how you feel about me. I drove to Sarah's sister's house with the encrypted file on my phone and the weight of 3 years of silence pressing down on my chest. She'd asked me to come. She told me about the kiss, about her own moment of weakness, about the shame she'd been carrying. And I'd realized, standing in her sister's living room, that I couldn't keep my own secret any longer. She deserved the truth. All of it. I parked the car and walked up to the front door. Sarah opened it before I could knock, and I could see in her eyes that she'd been crying. Not recent tears. Old ones, the kind that had dried but left tracks you couldn't miss. You came, she said. It wasn't a question. I told you I would. I stepped inside, and she closed the door behind me. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Sarah led me to the living room. She sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, and waited. I sat across from her and pulled out my phone. I've been writing something. A journal of sorts. I started it the day I told you I didn't love you anymore. The day I lied to you. I know you lied. Her voice was quiet, but firm. I've always known. I just didn't know why. I'm about to tell you why. I opened the file and handed her the phone. Read it. All of it. And then we can talk. Sarah took the phone with trembling hands. She started reading, her eyes moving across the screen, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that looked a lot like horror. This can't be real, she whispered. This is Sebastian. This is insane. Keep reading. She did. She read every word of the encrypted file, the miscarriage, the cancer, the slow unraveling of our marriage in the first timeline. And then the second timeline, my decision to withdraw, to push her away, to start an affair with Jessica. When she finished, she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. You're telling me you lived through all of that? Her voice cracked. You watched me die, and you came back and decided the best thing to do was to make me hate you. I thought I was protecting you. My own voice was raw. I thought if I left before the miscarriage, before the cancer, before everything fell apart, you'd be better off. You'd find someone who wouldn't fail you the way I did. Failed me. Sarah stood up, her hands balled into fists. You had a vision of the future, and you used it to destroy our marriage before it even had a chance. You didn't even try to fight it. You just gave up. I was trying to save you. You were trying to save yourself, she shouted. You were so afraid of losing me that you pushed me away first. You made sure it would happen on your terms, so you wouldn't have to watch it happen again. That's not love. Sebastian, that's cowardice. I opened my mouth to argue, but she cut me off. I've been carrying this baby for 3 months, she said, her hand on her stomach. 3 months of wondering what I did wrong. 3 months of blaming myself for your affair. And now you're telling me it was all because of some dream you had, some alternate reality that you decided was more real than this one. It wasn't a dream. I stood up to face her. It was real. Every single moment of it. I watched you die. Sarah, I held your hand while you took your last breath. And when I woke up in our bedroom, I was so broken that I couldn't see any other way out. Sarah stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. A hollow, broken sound. You know what the worst part is? She shook her head. I almost believe you because I've been having dreams too. Nightmares really about losing a baby, about getting sick. About you standing by my hospital bed, looking at me like I was already gone. She paused. I thought they were just pregnancy hormones, but now I wonder, maybe they weren't. I felt the blood drain from my face. What are you saying? I'm saying I think I remember too. She sat back down, suddenly exhausted. Not the way you do, not the full picture, just fragments, flashes, the feeling of being so sick I couldn't get out of bed. The feeling of you holding my hand, and the fear in your eyes when you looked at me. She looked up at me, and there was something new in her expression, something that looked almost like understanding. You had to watch me die, she said quietly, and then you came back, and you tried to change it. But you didn't trust me enough to tell me. You didn't trust me to fight with you. I didn't want you to have to fight, I said. I wanted you to have a chance at a life without pain. But I'm still in pain. She touched her chest, right here, because the man I loved decided I was too fragile to handle the truth. He decided I was better off alone. She was right. She was absolutely right. And I had no defense. I left Sarah's sister's house an hour later. We hadn't resolved anything. We'd just talked in circles, each of us trying to make the other understand, neither of us succeeding. As I walked to my car, I noticed a familiar sedan parked across the street. Jessica's car. My heart dropped. She must have followed me here. Before I could react, Jessica stepped out of the car. Her eyes were wild, her hair disheveled, her expression a mask of pure rage. You think you can just walk away from me? She advanced toward me, her hands shaking. You think you can use me and dumb me like I'm nothing? Jessica, this isn't the place. Don't tell me where the place is. She was shouting now. I lost my job because of you, Dad. I lost my reputation because of you. And you get to go back to your perfect wife and your perfect baby like I never existed. I held up my hands. I never meant to hurt you. I was in a bad place. Save it. She was close enough now that I could see the tears streaming down her face. I'm not letting you walk away from this. If I can't have you, then no one can. She lunged at me, her hands reaching for my throat. I grabbed her wrists, trying to hold her off, but she was stronger than I expected. We struggled, stumbling backward toward my car. The front door of the house opened. Sarah stepped out, her phone in her hand. Sebastian, what's going on? Jessica's head snapped toward Sarah. You, she screamed. This is all your fault. If you hadn't been so perfect, he never would have come to me. She let go of me and started running toward Sarah. I tackled her from behind, pulling her to the ground. She fought me, scratching, biting, screaming obscenities. I'm calling the police. Sarah shouted, already dialing. Jessica twisted out of my grip and scrambled to her feet. She ran for my car, opened the driver's side door, and jumped in before I could stop her. Give me the keys, she screamed. Give me the keys, or I'll drive it through her house. I didn't have the keys, they were still in my pocket. But Jessica was already fumbling with the ignition, trying to hotwire the car like she'd seen in movies. Jessica, stop. I ran toward the car. You're going to hurt someone? She didn't listen. She found a spare key under the visor, a habit I developed for emergencies. The engine roared to life. And then she hit the gas. The car shot forward, straight toward Sarah, who was standing on the porch. I tackled Sarah out of the way just as the car crashed into the front of the house, shattering the door and part of the wall. The air was filled with dust and broken glass. Sarah was underneath me, gasping, her hands protectively over her stomach. Are you okay? I asked. Is the baby? I'm fine, she said. The baby's fine. Get off me. I rolled off her and looked toward the car. Jessica was slumped over the steering wheel, blood trickling down her forehead. The airbag had deployed, and the front of the car was crumpled against the house. Sirens wailed in the distance. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They pulled Jessica out of the car and strapped her to a stretcher. She was conscious, but barely. They said she'd have a concussion and some broken ribs, but she'd survive. Sarah was checked out too. The baby was fine. No signs of distress. She was bruised, exhausted, but alive. I was standing by the ambulance when a police officer approached me. Mr. Blake, we have some questions about what happened here. I know. I nodded. I'll answer everything. But first, I looked towards Sarah, who was sitting on the back of another ambulance, wrapped in a blanket. I need to talk to my wife. The officer nodded and stepped away. I walked over to Sarah and sat down next to her. She didn't look at me. You saved my life, she said quietly, and the baby's. I would do it again, I said. 100 times. 1,000. She finally turned to look at me. Her eyes were red, swollen, but there was no anger in them, just exhaustion. And maybe, just maybe, a glimmer of something else. Your journal, she said. The file you showed me. Was all of it true? Every word. Every word. And you really think you're the reason I got sick? The reason the baby died in that other timeline? I don't know, but I was too afraid to find out. Sarah was silent for a long time. Then she reached out and took my hand. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I know that I can't raise this baby alone. I don't want to raise this baby alone. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not going to file the divorce papers. Not yet. I'm going to give us a chance to figure this out. But if you ever lie to me again, if you ever keep another secret like this, I'll walk away and I won't look back. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We're going to see a counselor, she continued. Both of us. And you're going to tell me everything, every single thing you remember about that other timeline. And oh more secrets, and oh more noble sacrifices. Just the truth. Okay, I said. Okay, I can do that. She squeezed my hand. Good. That was 3 years ago. Today, I'm sitting in the living room of our new house. Sarah is in the kitchen making dinner, and our son, our beautiful, healthy son, is playing with his toys on the floor. I watch him, this little person who shouldn't exist. In the first timeline, he never made it. In this timeline, he's laughing, full of life, surrounded by love. Sarah walks in and sits down next to me. She places her hand on my knee and smiles. Penny, for your thoughts? I was just thinking about how different things are now. I lean over and kiss her forehead. How lucky I am. Lucky. She laughs. You're lucky I haven't killed you in your sleep. I laugh too. It's a joke, but there's truth in it. We've been through so much. Therapy, nightmares, long conversations that lasted until dawn. But we're still here, together. I want to tell you something, she says, her voice suddenly serious. Something I've been holding on to for a while. My heart clenches. What is it? When I read your journal, the first time the night Jessica crashed into the house, I realized something. I and your other timeline, the one where I died, I was never told the truth. I never knew what you were going through. I died thinking you had given up on me. I nodded, not sure where she was going. But in this timeline, she continues, you gave me the truth. Even when you thought it would destroy me, you gave me the truth. And that changed everything. She takes my hand. I know you still carry guilt. I know you still think about the other Sarah, the one you lost. But I want you to know that the Sarah sitting here right now, the one who's alive, who's healthy, who has a son and a husband she loves, that Sarah forgives you. I forgive you. I feel tears pricking in my eyes. I don't try to hide them. I don't deserve you. I whisper. Maybe not. She smiles. But you have me anyway. And I have you. And that's all that matters. Our son runs up to us, a toy truck in his hand. Daddy, play. I scoop him up and hold him close. And for a moment, I can almost forget everything that came before. The pain, the loss, the fear. This is my second chance. My one and only second chance. And I'm not going to waste it.